In June 1998, 23-year-old Tara Henderson took a short Sunday drive and never returned. Her black Impala vanished, completely no witnesses, no crash site, no sign she ever left town. For 12 years, her family got zero answers. Then in 2010, a sealed storage locker was auctioned off nearly 200 miles away. Inside was Tara's Impala cactus dust, keys still in the ignition, a bullet hole clean through the hood, and something stashed inside. What investigators discovered would rock an entire county and finally force police to confront the truth dating back to June 1998. The final photo of Tara Henderson shows her grinning in the driveway, one hand on the driver's door of her black Impala, the other holding a styrofoam cup. It's blurry, taken across the yard, probably by her younger brother Drew. The date: Sunday, the 21st of June, 1998. The sky was clear. There was no wind. Tara wore jeans, a white tank top, and her favorite sunglasses, black frames with tiny cherry details at the temples. She told her mom she was heading into town to meet a friend for coffee. No bag, no phone backup. Then nothing. At first, people made excuses. Maybe her friend had car trouble. Maybe they drove somewhere else. Maybe she met someone. By 5 p.m., her call went straight to voicemail. By 7 p.m., Drew roamed the shoulder of County Road 12 with a flashlight. By 10 p.m., police were involved. By morning, Tara and her Impala were officially missing. In the early stages, small-town assumptions ruled. No skid marks, no damaged guardrail, no abandoned wallet, no empty coffee cups. The implication: Tara had simply vanished. The person she'd planned to meet, Miles Carter, claimed she'd never shown and that they hadn't spoken in weeks. He said they parted ways amicably after a breakup 3 months earlier. Tara had stopped answering his calls. Miles was 27 at the time, clean-cut, church-going, son of a local shop owner. He ran a small car repair garage. Over time, he invested in rental property and contributed to local politics. He stood on camera once, close to tears, during a televised candlelight vigil for Tara's birthday, calling her the kindest girl I ever met. And then time passed. By 2000, the news faded. By 2004, Miles owned multiple properties and had quietly sold the storage facility where Tara's Impala would eventually surface. Drew never stopped looking, not in the hero on television sense, but more quietly persistent. He studied old police files, drove back roads, visited junkyards. Every time he saw a black Impala in an impound lot or local shell, he called. He carried Tara's photo in his wallet until the paper yellowed. In May 2010, a contractor named Carlos Vega bought a foreclosed storage unit at a tax auction in the next county for just $112.6. He expected junk tires, boxes, maybe broken furniture. Instead, buried under tarps and moldering cardboard, he discovered a 1997 black Impala, sealed shut, padlocked, and coated in dust. The keys were still in the ignition. Police were called. The vehicle identification number matched the reported make and model of Tara's missing car. No broken glass. No forced entry. The vehicle was in remarkable condition, except for one startling detail: a small, clean bullet hole in the center of the hood. Next to it, someone had drawn a smiling face in the dust by hand. When Drew saw the photos, he fell silent. Then whispered, "That's her. That's the car." He added softly, "She washed it every Saturday. She kept it inside." But the layer of dust didn't match 12 years. It looked like 3 or 4, meaning the car had been driven, cleaned, moved. Someone handled it after the official search ended. Officers dusted the vehicle and found partial fingerprints on the door and trunk knot conclusive. The driver's seatbelt was clipped in. When unbuckled, a single long blonde hair fell out, matching Tara's parrots. The glove box wouldn't open. The trunk was empty except for a tiny, cheap silver lighter wedged under the driver's floor mat. No initials, no scuffs. Tara didn't smoke. The plate and VIN history showed no other owners, no impound records, no toll transits. The storage unit was owned by Black Ridge Partners, LLC, an anonymous P.O. box address making no real connections. The lot manager claimed the unit had been locked for at least 6 years beyond his memory. Drew drove to Miles Carter's auto shop and knocked on the office door. Miles didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. "I figured they'd find it eventually," he said. Just like that. And he leaned back in his leather chair as though nothing was wrong. "That car's been gone a long time." Drew pulled out Tara's childhood photo and held it in front of him. "Where was it?" Miles looked at the photo and gave a slow nod. "I don't know. I'd like to help, Drew, I do. But I don't know." That wasn't good enough. Mason James Drew's neighbor and filmmaker started collecting every shred of data. Records, interviews, flyers, community posts. He reached out to small-town newspapers and coffee shop blogs. He found the record of the auction and Carlos Vega's statement. In 2015, he released a short documentary titled Stillness in the Driveway. He laid out the timeline: Tara's disappearance, Miles Carter's statement, the auction, the car's condition, the bullet hole, the lighter, the hair. He included audio clips from a restored photo of Tara's driveway, audio interviews with Drew, statements from the sheriff's department, and a clip of Miles at the back of his shop crying in 2004. He maintained cautious language. No accusations, just questions. Why had the car appeared so far away? Who cleaned it? Who shot it and when? Why did Miles claim ignorance but seemingly know more? Responses ranged from local applause to death threats. Some commenters said it was staged. Others claimed local authorities planted the car to shut Mason up. Some said the license plate matched a case from 1972. Others saw codes in the bullet hole. Most comments were deleted. Many accounts vanished. Chillingly, dozens of commentatorial people claim they spotted that black Impala in remote dirt lots months before 2010. One said they saw it on a backcountry road in 2007. Another claimed it parked silently a block from Tara's old house in 2008. A third said the bullet hole had been there that whole time. Mason compiled every report: photographs, timestamps, audio descriptions. Finally, in 2019, he vanished himself. After his last email to Drew, "I'm close." Too close, he never responded again. He was last seen at a rest stop near the mythic Black Ridge Pass. Today, Tara Henderson remains missing. Miles Carter still claims he tells the truth. Drew's campaign to reopen the case takes him across town halls, talk radio interviews, and memorial candlelight walks. He still carries Tara's photo in his wallet, even grown old and frayed. The car with the fascial smoothed by her smile, bullet puncture, and lighter remains locked in impound. When Drew posted the final photo of the chassis with the bullet hole centered over a smiling face doodle in his social feed yesterday, it sparked a flame of public interest. Some say Tara was taken. Others believe she's still alive, hidden somewhere far from roads and cell phone signal. A few insist she became a ghost of the Place, warning, an echo, a presence in the wind. Others dismiss it as rumor. But nearly everyone agrees on one thing. Sometimes you find what you're not meant to. Sometimes things come back. Sometimes stories don't end quietly. "She's been gone 12 years, Miles said, his voice flat. He didn't flinch. "What do you want from me now?" Drew remained standing. He didn't accept the seat Miles offered. He didn't smile, just looked at him. "You told police you hadn't seen Tara since May '98. Said you weren't close." Miles nodded slowly. "That's right." Drew reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a photograph printed last night. It showed Tara, 3 days before she disappeared, standing outside the Pine Haven gas station, hair loose in the breeze, next to Miles. His arm rested around her shoulder, and he was smiling. Miles's face twitched. "That's supposed to be me?" he asked. "Photo's grainy. Could be anyone." Drew pointed. "You're wearing the same watch you've got on now." Miles didn't look down. He sighed. "She asked for a ride that day," he said. "Nothing more." "Why lie about it?" Drew pressed. He stepped closer. "She was scared, wasn't she?" Miles's smile hardened. "You know, Tara liked stirring things up, getting people talking. Thought she was going to expose someone. Thought she mattered." Drew clenched his jaw. She did. Miles waved him off with practiced ease. I don't know where she went, son, but here's the truth. She wasn't murdered, and she sure as hell wasn't taken. She drove off. Maybe met someone. Maybe wanted to be untraceable. He patted Drew's arm patronizingly. Let it go. Drew didn't budge. Have you ever been inside that storage unit? Miles blinked once, then smiled. Why would I? 10 minutes later, Drew slammed into his truck. His fists gripped the wheel. His phone buzzed. A message from Deputy Langley, one of the few officers who still answered him. Fingerprint results are back. Partial match on the trunk latch, Tara's passenger side door, matched unknown male. Rest inconclusive. Drew stared. His jaw twitched. Unknown male passenger side. Tara never let random people drive her Impala. Not ever. He pulled over and dialed Langley. That unit wasn't parked there the whole time, he said. It had a tarp on it, all sealed. Langley exhaled. You think someone moved it recently? I think someone hid it. Someone came back for it. Drew paused. We need to reopen the case. Langley hesitated. Can't reopen unless you have something solid. I will. That night, Drew snuck back to the storage unit with a crowbar. Police had already unlocked the Impala, but the glove box remained jammed untouched. He switched on his flashlight and slid into the driver's seat. The leather felt molded to Tara's shape. The stale smell of dust and faint perfume lingered like a memory. The glove box latch sat just below the dash. He eased the crowbar under the latch and pried it with a quiet crack. Inside, a faded cassette tape and a folded paper sealed in plastic. Also, a white gas station receipt dated the 21st of June, 1998, time stamped 1:42 p.m., just 27 minutes after Tara left home. It detailed $5.43 spent on a soda, snack, and a gallon of gas. On the back, written in Tara's handwriting, Miles. Drew's breath froze. That wasn't some random name, it was the man who said Tara meant nothing. He slid the cassette into the player he'd brought. It hissed. Then a voice came through, soft, shaky, echoing in a small room. This is Tara. I don't know if this reaches anyone, but if something happens to me, please tell Drew. I didn't just disappear. I found things I shouldn't have. I think Miles knows. I think he's going to do something. I'm not gone. I'm here. End. The tape ended with a scrape, the sound of it being yanked from the player mid-recording. Drew froze. Sweat chilled his neck. He looked at the dusty windshield. Someone had drawn a smiley face near the bullet hole freshly traced. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat in the truck, staring at the Impala through the chain-link fence. The recorder lay on the passenger seat. He replayed Tara's voice, each time softer, more anguished. If something happens to me. By morning, he was furious. And ready. He drove straight to the sheriff's office. Walked in with the cassette, receipt, and tape in hand. Deputy Langley met him outside. You broke into the glove box? Langley asked. I opened my sister's car, Drew said flatly. Langley listened to the tape twice, expressionless, but tapping his foot nervously. When it ended, he exhaled. She name's Miles, he said. On record. Drew nodded. That's her handwriting on the receipt. That's her fear. Langley's face tightened. We'll run voice analysis, log the evidence, follow protocol. Drew shook his head. We don't want protocol. We want justice. Langley held up a hand. Miles has friends in the county property deals, council members. We'll need more than this. Drew's eyes narrowed. Over the next week, Drew and Langley worked covertly. They searched storage records, rental logs, bank withdrawals. Drew reached out to Tara's old friends, people the sheriff never spoke to. He uncovered Miles's strange behavior, suspicious withdrawals, untracked rentals of remote cabins, and a phone call placed on the 21st of June, 1998, to a burner registered near Pine Haven Station. Langley obtained a warrant to test the cassette for DNA or saliva. Drew found a security cam in an abandoned grocery store. They used old footage to match Miles's watch strap patterns from the Impala photo. By the 21st of June, 2018, the 20th anniversary, Drew handed prosecutors the package, the tape, the receipt, DNA comparison, call logs, even the cell location, ping from 1,998, placing Miles in the Pine Haven area at 1:42 p.m. 2 weeks later, prosecutors issued charges, first-degree kidnapping and tampering with evidence. Miles Carter, now 47, stood in court with a clean-cut lawyer and an odd grin. When asked for comment, he said, "I loved Tara. I just wanted her to stay." And Tara Henderson was never found, but after charges were filed, the storage lot where her car sat was excavated. Forensic teams sifted through soil and tarps. They did not recover a body. They did find rope fibers matching the glove box prints. Miles's DNA was found on that same tapion, the spool. His trial is pending. Today, Tara's story is back in local headlines. Public interest surged. Donations poured in for ongoing searches, breathalyzer-equipped drones, remote excavation teams. Some believe Tara is still alive hidden. Maybe she managed to escape. Maybe she's living under a new identity somewhere else. Others believe she was buried, and those who handled her car didn't know her, didn't want to say. The gas receipt, the tape, the Carthay speak louder than any missing person report ever could. Because sometimes the evidence is silent until someone dares to crack it open. Sometimes justice isn't handed down. It's dug, out-toned, dusty receipt, one jarred cassette, one tape player piece by piece. And sometimes stories do end not with a whisper, but with a voice finally heard. Levi's eyes stayed locked on Langley. "How much more do you need?" he asked, "when the girl's voice is telling you who did it?" Langley didn't answer. That night, Levi went home and pulled out the old family photo box. He sifted through years of birthdays and backyard summers until he found it the original photo of Erin, leaning against her black Camaro 3 days before she vanished. He scanned it into his laptop and zoomed in. In the background, across the street, something he hadn't noticed before. A silver SUV. No plates were visible, but the bumper sticker caught his eye. It matched the design used by a defunct trucking company, High Pine Freight. Erin had mentioned them once in an old notebook, a single line circled twice. Why is High Pine always parked near Grant's shop? Levi started cross-referencing. By 1 a.m. he had it. High Pine Freight had gone bankrupt in 2002, but in 1998 they had exactly one logistics coordinator registered in Cedar Ridge. His name, Grant Mercer. So Erin had known about the company. Grant had worked for them. He'd left before they folded, probably scrubbed his name from their records, but Levi had the connection. He printed it all. Then he built the wall grant, Erin, High Pine, the Camaro, the cassette. It wasn't random. It had never been random. It was deliberate. The next morning, Levi got a call. Not from Langley, not from the sheriff. It came from the manager of the storage complex. "Hey," the man said, "we had some motion near Unit 12 last night, out by the fence line. Camera caught movement, but it's glitchy. Someone was there." Levi's stomach dropped. He was in the truck before the call ended. The unit was still locked, padlock intact, but something was off. The tarp covering the Camaro had shifted, folded differently than before, and someone had opened the driver's side door. Right there, traced into the dust just above the old smiley face, were 2 words: to stay out. Levi didn't call the police. He called Nina Forrester, the only reporter who'd ever covered Erin's disappearance with any integrity, the one who never forgot. "They're trying to bury her," he said. Nina didn't hesitate. Not anymore. The last time Levi had seen Nina, she was standing on their porch, notebook trembling in her hands, back in June of '98. Now she met him at a diner just off Highway 41. Same sharp eyes, same quiet edge to her voice. "You brought it?" she asked. Levi slid the envelope across the table photo, gas station receipt, and a digital copy of the tape. She didn't ask for permission, just put her earbuds in and pressed play. Within seconds, Erin's voice cut through the clatter of plates and the low hum of the kitchen. Nina's jaw tightened. When it ended, she took the buds out slowly. "Jesus," she whispered. Levi said nothing. She unfolded the gas receipt. She bought this just before she vanished. Levi nodded. And that name, Grant, written by her, I'd bet my life on it. Nina looked up. You already are. They sat in silence. Then Levi leaned forward. You remember that old trucking company, High Pine Freight? Nina raised an eyebrow. The one that went under? Grant worked there, logistics manager. Her eyes narrowed. She knew, Levi said. She was trying to get something on them. Something was wrong. Nina pulled out her phone. I still have some old clippings on High Pine. There were Whispers missing manifests, unlogged shipments, off-the-books drivers. One guy even disappeared. They blamed bookkeeping. Levi's voice dropped. Or they buried it. Back at Levi's place, he opened the old shoebox Erin had kept under her bed. It had been in the back of his closet for over a decade. Inside, faded photographs, ticket stubs, random note-sewn torn receipt from a second-hand bookstore, and a roll of undeveloped 35mm film. On the canister, in Erin's handwriting, High Pine, June. His heart pounded. Nina called in a favor with a photo lab in Reno. 3 hours later, the negatives came back strips of grainy but visible images. Most were unremarkable. Trucks, trailers, warehouse lots. But the sixth frame stopped Levi cold. There was Erin's black Camaro, parked behind a corrugated metal building. Across from it, leaning against a loading dock, was Grant Mercer. Nina stared. Where was this? Old depot off Route 9, Levi said. High Pine's old site. They bulldozed it in '02. She traced the grainy outline of Grant's figure. Erin either took this or someone gave it to her. The final strip was stranger. It showed a man blurry, caught mid-turn standing beside a trailer, wearing a security badge and holding what looked like a clipboard. His face was obscured. On the back of that photo, Erin had written, "Same guy again. Saw him near Grant's shop, too." Nina tapped the words. She was being followed. That night, Levi didn't go home. He drove straight to Grant's old auto shop. It had been closed for years, now overgrown and rusting. Grass choked the lot. The paint was flaking from the walls. A flatbed truck sat out back, buried to its rims in weeds. Levi circled the property with a flashlight. Behind the garage he found a collapsed storage shed, roof caved in, soot still blackening the beams. Beneath charred wood and broken shingles, something metallic caught his eyes, a half-melted file cabinet, scorched but intact. He yanked open the top drawer. Most of the contents were water-damaged and illegible. But one sheet had survived. It was a shipment manifest from High Pine Freight, dated the 19th of June, 1998, just 2 days before Erin disappeared. It listed an outgoing delivery routed through a temporary storage location. Unit number 12, the same number as the one where Erin's Camaro was found. His hand shook. He read it again. Grant Mercer had signed off on the paperwork. He stepped back, heart hammering, blood roaring in his ears. Then behind him, a soft crack. A twig. He froze. At the tree line just beyond the ruined shed, a silhouette stood perfectly still. Levi squinted, raising his light. But by the time the beam landed, the figure was already gone. He didn't sleep that night. He sat in his truck outside the sheriff's department, gripping the envelope manifest, photos taped until his fingers ached. His phone buzzed on the seat. A message from Nina. I'm publishing at noon. If they won't open the case, we will. At 11:58 a.m., the story went live. The headline: She didn't leave. She was buried. It included everything. Erin's voice from the cassette, the gas receipt, the undeveloped photos, and the manifest that linked Grant to the storage unit. The images were grainy, but the timeline was clear. The connections undeniable. Within hours, it spread. Comments poured in. People remembered Erin. Some came forward. A former High Pine driver admitted to seeing Grant at the unit a couple times late at night, back in '99. Another recalled rumors about a girl who knew too much. That evening, Levi sat on his porch while the sun dropped low behind the ridge. He still hadn't heard from Langley. But around 8:30 p.m., a cruiser pulled up. Langley stepped out alone, holding a manila folder. He said nothing at first, just handed it over. Inside, a warrant request for reopening the Maddox investigation. Signed, stamped. Langley looked tired. "You were right," he said. Levi didn't reply. "You understand what you're starting?" Langley asked. "If Mercer's involved, it won't stop with him." Levi nodded. "Then we don't stop either." Behind them, the pine trees stood still. Somewhere far off, a coyote called, and in Levi's hands, the file folder trembled, finally real, finally recognized. Erin had been right all along. Now the world would hear her. Too far to see clearly, but someone was watching. Levi lifted his flashlight, searching the tree line, but by the time the beam hit, whoever it was had vanished. Back in the truck, Levi locked the doors and stared at the manila folder on the passenger seat, Erin's tape, her gas receipt, the trail photos of Grant at the old loading dock, and now this. The manifest linking High Pine freight directly to Unit 12, where her Impala was found. He whispered into the dark, "I know exactly what I'm doing." 3 days later, at 3:17 a.m., Nina's inbox pinged with an anonymous email. No subject, no message, just an attachment titled, "You Don't Know Half of It," MP4. She didn't open it right away. Instead, she called Levi, and they met in her modest upstairs office once, part of a tax preparer's suite, its walls still faintly scented of Lysol and toner. He transferred the file to her laptop. The video played back grainy and shakily shot through what looked like a cracked phone screen. A woman's voice whispered behind the frame. "He makes them use fake names. Said she was too nosy, said she knew too much." The camera wobbled, revealing the back of a man's head, salt and pepper hair, harsh warehouse lighting, a clipboard clutched in one hand. Another voice joined dead calm, flat. "No photos, no questions, just get her in the car." Then static. Then black. Levi sat rigid, eyes hollow. Nina's jaw clenched. "That voice is that Grant?" she asked quietly. Levi nodded, voice tight. "That's only half of it." They sent the clip to Deputy Langley. 6 hours later, his reply was cautious. "Can't use it. No time stamp. No verification of who filmed it." Levi pressed back. "You heard his voice." Langley paused. Suggestive, but not conclusive. Nina snapped, "What would be enough?" Langley didn't answer. That night, Levi returned to his garage and reopened Erin's Impala glove box. He pressed play on the cassette for the final 5 seconds. "Please tell Levi. I didn't just disappear. I didn't—" The tape clicked off blank silence. He rewound and played again. That time, a faint static burst caught his ear. He transferred the audio to his laptop and processed it using the software Nina sent. Beneath Erin's voice was something Elsie clicked like metal on metal, followed by a distant male voice. "Don't leave that in the car. Different accent than Grant Sodder's southern drawl. Not Grant, but his accomplice. Maybe the man who sealed the glove box. Maybe the one who moved the Impala. Levi loaded the audio into a transcription engine. The phrase was clear aggressive, blurred yet audible. He knew who said it. Levi drove to the storage site again. This time he parked 2 blocks away and crept up behind the gravel alley. Eyes locked on the rear gate and the gravel floor. 3 sets of fresh footprints led toward Unit 12. 1. A heavy, wide boot print large enough to match Grant's size. 2. A narrow, feminine tread. 3. One limped dragging, uneven, like someone injured or frail. He snapped photos, measured the prints, and emailed everything to Nina. She checked with a forensic contact. The heavy boot print matched a 2005 photo of Grant Mercer at a groundbreaking ceremony. The limping print was unidentified, but someone else had been there. Levi understood. Grant wasn't acting alone. The next day, Grant Mercer called. Private number. Levi let it ring to voicemail. When he listened, "You keep chasing ghosts, Levi. You'll find one that bites back. Leave it buried or someone gets hurt." Levi saved the message, then forwarded it to Nina under a single subject line. Mask slipping. That night, they met again, this time at a cold-shuttered diner on the north edge of town. Empty booths, a neon open sign flickering off. Nina had brought something newer. Yellowing newspaper clipping dated 1995. Levi had never seen it. Headline: Local girl missing after Riverbend bonfire. The girl wasn't Erin. She was Riley Dawes, 17, vanished after a summer bonfire linked to High Pine Freight staff. The case had fizzled. The deputy who handled it? Grant Mercer's cousin. Levi opened the folder on the table. Inside, 2 more missing person bulletins. Both young women. Both disappeared between 1995 and 1999. Both had ties to High Pine, the freight company, or Grant's social circle, and all had been marked as voluntary disappearances. Levi stared. This wasn't just Erin anymore. Grant hadn't just lied, he'd built a pipeline. The next morning, Levi didn't confront Grant, not yet. Instead, he drove to the old Mercer family home on Cypress Road. Grant's cousin still lived there. Same sagging gutters. Same flagpole with a frayed state banner. New truck in the driveway, same vanity plate. H5A32T. Levi jotted it down in his notebook, then drove east out of town. Not to hunt, not to grieve. To dig. His next stop was a record shop. Nobody remembered dusty linoleum floors, fluorescent lighting that hummed like memory. Inside, he met a woman named Sierra Lacey Someone. Nina had tracked down through archived forum posts from 1998. 27 years ago, Sierra had left a comment under a local news story about Erin's disappearance. The message had been deleted within hours. He used to follow me too. Back off, or you'll end up like her. Back then, nobody listened. Now she sat across from Levi with chipped blue nail polish and a mug of lukewarm tea, her hands trembling. I only worked at High Pine for 6 months, Sierra said. Inventory mostly, supply logs, nothing big. You knew Grant? Levi asked. She hesitated, then nodded. Everyone did. She looked down at her tea, voice softer now. He liked being the one in charge. You said no, you were out. But if you asked questions, got too close to the wrong files, he noticed. Levi leaned forward. Did you ever see Erin? Sierra blinked. Not in person, but I heard about her. She was asking questions, wanted to write a report, get something to the police or the paper. Then she was just gone. Levi swallowed. Anyone else say something back then? There was a driver, she said. Oscar, I think? Limped on his left leg. He told me to shut up one day. You don't want to know what's locked up in those trailers. He quit right after. Back in his truck, Levi checked the shoebox, again Erin's old keepsakes. Inside was the undeveloped film labeled High Pine, June. Nina had already digitized the photos. Levi pulled them up again. He focused on the 6th frame, the loading dock, his sister's car, and across the lot, Grant Mercer, standing in profile. But now, the 7th frame mattered more. A man leaning into the driver's side window of a trailer. He wore a lanyard with an ID badge and braced himself on a clipboard. His face was half turned. In the dim light, his left leg twisted awkwardly off balance. Oscar. That night, Levi couldn't sleep. He sat in the cab of his truck across from Unit 12, eyes fixed on the silhouette of the Impala behind the chain-link fence. The smiley face still traced faintly in the dust on the windshield. Nina called just after midnight. Sierra confirmed it. The guy's full name is Oscar Devine. He was questioned once back in '96 when another girl vanished. Nothing stuck. What happened to him? Disappeared off payroll in '99. No forwarding address, no family contact, no one seen him since. Levi felt his stomach twist. Where would he go? He asked. Nina was quiet. I checked the old property records. There's a hunting cabin tied to a shell company used by High Pine, out near Mill Bluff Ridge, 20 miles from the unit. He was already grabbing his jacket. The cabin had no address, no driveway, just a rusted gate and overgrown grass. Levi parked at the edge of the forest and walked the final stretch. The air smelled like wet bark and memory. A crow called once. Then silence. Inside the cabin, everything was still. Dust covered the floorboards. Empty beer cans littered a wood stove. and in the corner a steel cabinet locked with a chain. Levi pried it open. Inside were cassette tapes, dozens, each labeled with dates. He pulled the oldest, June 1998, slid it into his pocket. As he stepped back outside, he looked up something scratched into the cabin doorframe, letters carved hastily. "Don't leave her here." He turned toward the woods and didn't stop moving until the trees fell behind him. The next morning, the sun hadn't yet risen when Levi and Nina sat in her office, the June 1998 tape playing on a battered cassette deck. Aaron's voice filled the room. "They said I saw something I shouldn't have. I think they're going to make me disappear. Please, if this is found, don't believe what they say. I didn't run away. I didn't." The tape ended. "New music, new edit, new doubt." Nina whispered, "She left breadcrumbs, and they thought no one would follow them." Levi stared at the player. "They were wrong." Levi sat back, absorbing Sierra's words. "He made you feel seen until you tried to leave. Or—" She looked down for a moment. "Aaron asked me once about some of the shipments, why we didn't log trailer contents properly. I told her to be careful." Levi leaned forward. "Did Grant threaten you?" Sierra swallowed hard. "He didn't have to. His cousin came to my apartment 2 days after I quit. Said, 'You'd be safer keeping quiet.'" Levy's blood ran cold. Sierra reached into her worn bag and pulled out a small notebook, edges curled, pages yellowed. "Aaron gave me this," she said, voice trembling. "She told me, if anything happened to her, to keep it safe." Levi opened it carefully. Inside were pages filled with notes, employee rosters, license plates, nicknames. One entry was circled 3 times, Unit 19. Next to it, "Don't trust anyone if they know about it." Another entry listed initials, CHBD, the girl from 95. Then below that, 2 more moved, 1 watched. This was more than a diorite, was a ledger. Aaron had documented everything. For months. Levi's finger hovered over a line. "CH said she was just another cleanup, but he looked scared." Said the smile was new. Levi stared at the word smile. He remembered the single smiley drawn in the Camaro's dust beside the bullet hole, and the second one traced 2 weeks later. Someone had kept drawing it. Levi stood and stepped outside into the cool night air, calling Nina. "We were wrong," he said. "This isn't just about Aaron." He told her about the notebook, the names, the pattern. Nina was silent for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "Meet me. I found something you need to see." They met an hour later in a grocery store parking lot, bright, public, neutral territory. Nina opened her trunk and handed Levi a file folder. He opened it, revealing a scan of a rental agreement dated the 18th of June, 1998. Signed with Grant Mercer's name, it covered Unit 19, paid in cash, for 1 month exactly 3 days before Aaron vanished. "He signed for this own damn name," Nina said. "This wasn't panic. It was planned." Levi stood there, hands trembling. "What if she's still alive?" Nina didn't argue. After 12 years, Levi nodded. If she knew too much, if she saw what they were doing, maybe they didn't kill her. Maybe they kept her. Maybe they moved her. Nina didn't respond right away, but she didn't argue either. Later that night, Levi drove back to where Aaron's Impala sat at Unit 19. His breath misted in the closed cab. He slid Aaron's cassette into the deck and listened to her voice. "Please tell Levi I didn't just leave. I didn't." He leaned down to inspect under the dashboard. There, taped beneath the dash with black electrical tape, was a small plastic stripe pan, even tinier audio recorder, labeled "Backup Do Not Play." He peeled it off carefully and played it. It clicked, then static, then Aaron's voice closer this time. "Grant isn't the only one. There's someone else, I think, the broker. They're moving girls. Someone's watching me." She paused, voice faint. "I think he knows I planted this." Then a man's low, guttural voice, aggressive, growling, "Say goodbye." Then silence. Levi sat frozen. Aaron had recorded everything, right up to her final warning and the broker, a name no one had seen coming. 2 nights later, Nina's apartment was ransacked. They stole nothing, just opened every cabinet, flipped cushions, but the folder with Aaron's ledger and Grant's rental slip was gone. The lock hadn't been broken, they'd used a key. At 3:12 a.m., Nina's call came. "They took it." "We're protected," Levi replied calmly. "Everything's scanned and backed up." She exhaled. They knew what to grab. They didn't even touch the television. Levi couldn't sleep again. By dawn, he was parked outside Grant Mercer's old auto shop, now repurposed, but still with the storage shed out back. He walked its perimeter, surveying chain-link fence, rickety padlock, a new security camera above the alley. Levi knocked on the office door. A man emerged. Dustin, mid-30s, grease-stained shirt, polite but wary. "I bought the place last year," Dustin explained. "Only came with the building and whatever was left." "Have you ever gone inside that shed?" Levi asked. Dustin shook his head. Nothing but rats and melted plastic in there now. Levi nodded and asked permission to look around. 10 minutes later he was alone inside the shed, scanning every beam and wall. All seemed ordinary until he noticed a corner where the concrete floor looked newer, darker. He knelt, scraping away a thin layer of dust with his key-fresh cement revealed beneath. Back in the truck, Levi called Nina. "Someone patched part of the shed, sealed it over. End of." "If Grant did that himself," Nina replied after a pause, "there'd be no records. If he paid someone, find the contractor." Levi ended the call determined. That night he pored over Aaron's scanned ledger. One page mentioned the place with metal stairs and yellow light behind the freezer. He paused. It wasn't the storage unit. It was somewhere else. A second site. He called Sierra. "Do you remember that place?" Her voice trembled softly. "Yeah, I think I do." Sierra's voice crackled over the line. "It was behind the old processing warehouse on Glenburn Road. There was a basement kind of half-finished, just a freezer, metal staircase, and a weird yellow light always on." Levi's pen didn't stop. "You think that's where they took Aaron?" "I don't know," Sierra whispered, "but they kept certain trailers parked out back. Always the same ones." That was enough. By the next morning, Levi was parked along a tree line, half a mile from the abandoned Glenburn warehouse. The building was still the wretched cinder blocks, rusted siding, the front doors chained shut. But behind it, weeds had overgrown a narrow gravel path, barely wide enough for a truck. He followed it on foot. What he found made his heart freeze. The yellow light was still on, a single bulb, humming above a sunken loading dock. He stepped closer. A metal staircase, coated in rust, led down to a steel basement door. No signs, no lock. He pushed it open. The smell hit first. Not rot-butt bleach, damp air, and something else. Stillness. Inside, the basement was divided by a plastic curtain, half torn. Behind it, a walk-in freezer, door wide open, empty except for a wooden chair bolted to the floor. A chain dangled from the wall. Beside it, a clipboard with a faded sheet of paper. Levi picked it up. The top line read, "June 21, 1998 inte 4 BE, monsieur." Levi's breath caught. E.M. Aaron Maddox. He flipped the paper over. A second name crossed out, R.D. Riley DeWitt. Then initials. A list. Choke. Be moved. Stay low. Some dead weight. And scribbled at the bottom, almost like an afterthought, "Clear by the 10th of July." He didn't know what all of it meant. But it was proof. Names, patterns, schedule. And Aaron's initials listed under intake. He took photos of everything, then quietly slipped out, retracing his steps through the trees, not trusting the gravel road. That evening, he and Nina sat in her kitchen, the photos spread across the table, the clipboard, the chair, the intake sheet. "They had a system," Nina whispered. "This wasn't opportunistic, this was industrial." Levi stared at the paper. "Chiz Clay Harrell. We know that." "Then B?" Nina asked. "The one marked moved." Levi's eyes narrowed. "The broker." End of. Nina didn't speak. She didn't have to. They were looking at evidence of an underground network, one that had existed long before Aaron vanished, one that had been protected by silence, by fear, by bloodlines people like Clay and his cousin, and maybe others. The next morning, Levi went to see Officer Langley one final time. This time, he brought a flash drive, a printed intake sheet, a list of all the initials, and Aaron's notebook. Langley didn't look shocked. He just looked tired. "If we open this, it's going to spread," he said. "We're talking multiple counties, people in positions of power." Levi nodded. "And girls who were never listed as missing." Langley studied him. "You ready to testify?" "I've got recordings, names, time, stamped receipts, witnesses," Levi said. "We don't just have a case, we have a pattern." Langley leaned back in his chair. "Then we move, quietly, and fast." He reached for the folder. "I'll take this straight to the AG's office. But you better watch your back, Levi. These kinds of men, they don't go down easy." "I know," Levi said. "But neither did my sister." 2 weeks later, the press got the story. The headlines didn't name Aaron first. They called it a multi-state trafficking ring. They said charges were pending. They mentioned Clay Harrell's name only once. But for the first time in 12 years, Aaron wasn't listed as a runaway. She was listed as a victim. And that mattered. In the final scene, Levi stood outside Unit 19, the wind kicking up the dust across the gravel. He placed a new padlock on the doorknob to hide the Camaro, but to mark it. A sealed chapter, but never erased. Inside, her cassette still rested on the dash. He didn't take it with him. Some messages were meant to stay right where they were recorded. Echoes. Proof. Aaron Maddox vanished in 1998. Her car was found in 2010. Her voice, her truth, was finally heard in 2024. If this case moved you, the one on the right will leave you breathless. Same state, same decade, same silence. But this time, the killer spoke first. "Metal stairs, yellow light," Sierra said quietly. "There was a place behind one of the diners. We used to deliver there. It had a walk-in freezer and this weird smell like bleach and rust." Mason's pulse quickened. "What was it?" "I don't know. We weren't allowed back there. Clay always said it was secure storage. Only a few drivers ever had keys." "You remember where it was?" She paused. "I can take you." They met 2 hours later, just past dusk. Sierra looked nervous, jacket zipped to the chin, hands buried deep in her sleeves. The building was still standing. It had once been a family-style diner, now gutted and silent. The windows were blacked out, but the back lot remained clear and swept. Sierra pointed. "That's it. Behind the freezer unit." They moved slowly. The metal stairs were rusted but intact. The back door had been forced open at some point. Inside, the floor was sticky with grime. A row of freezer units lined the far wall, unplugged now, reeking of mold and decay. Behind the last one, a narrow hallway led to a steel door. Mason tried the handle. Locked. He pressed his ear to the cold metal. Nothing. Then something. A thud. Another. Then silence. "We need to call Langley," he said. Sierra was already dialing. "What are we telling him?" she asked. "That we found a locked door in a place Clay used to manage." Mason didn't answer. He looked down. Beside the door, in the dust, were scuff marks, boot prints. One large, one smaller. A woman's. Langley arrived 22 minutes later. He stepped out of his cruiser with one hand already resting on his holster. "What exactly am I walking into?" "A freezer room," Mason said. "Locked since at least '98, with fresh tracks outside. And possibly someone on the other side." Langley didn't argue. He retrieved bolt cutters from the trunk and approached the door. They breached it at 9:37 p.m. Inside was a narrow room, cold, silent. In the far corner, curled up and still, was a woman, hands bound, head covered, alive. Langley moved first. Mason followed. The woman flinched under the light. Her voice was dry, cracked. They cut the restraints. She didn't speak, not yet. Just trembled. eyes wide, skin pale and streaked with bruises. Then, quietly, one word. Danielle. Hospital staff confirmed it. Danielle Morgan, 35. But when Mason looked through the observation glass, he didn't see a woman in her 30s. He saw a girl, frozen at 23, pale face, fingers shaking. Her eyes flinched every time a door opened in the hallway. She hadn't said much, just her name, and one sentence again and again, "Please don't let him find me. Langley had pulled every string he had to keep things quiet. No press, no official police report. Danielle was being treated under an alias. Ellie stood beside Mason, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "She's still in shock," she said. "Might take days before she talks." Mason nodded slowly. She said him. Singular. Ellie turned. "Clay." Mason shook his head. She already knew Clay was involved. This ferret's about someone else. N. That night, Mason went home and laid it all out again. Every piece. Photos, storage manifests, the ledger, the tape. The quote from Danielle's hidden recorder. He calls him the broker. The name hadn't come up in any of Clay's files. No paper trail, no lease, no alias in any official record. But Mason remembered something. Buying freight had off. Books drivers guys who used fake names, moved unlisted freight, got paid in cash. Ellie had interviewed one of them once. A man named Reuben. He vanished before trial. Mason called her. "You said one of the drivers used burner receipts. Did any have broker in the tags?" Ellie was silent, then said, "One did. BKR 47. I thought it was random." 2 hours later she sent a scan of an old gas station receipt. Dated the 22nd of June, 1998. One day after Danielle vanished. $13.11 in cash. Truck ID, BKR 47. Signature line, blank. The gas station was 6 miles from the diner where Danielle had just been found. Mason's stomach turned. Someone had moved her. Not once, but again. She'd been hidden close. All this time. And whoever the broker was, he was still out there. At the hospital, Danielle finally began to speak. Langley called Mason at 6:43 p.m. "She's ready." The room was warm. Too warm. Danielle's voice was barely a whisper, each sentence a mountain to climb. "I wasn't supposed to go there," she said. "I was just following a truck, one of the Bayeen ones. I thought Clay was meeting someone. I wanted a photo. Him." Mason stayed silent, listening. "I saw them with another girl, younger. She was crying. They shoved her into the freezer room. Danielle's hands trembled. I ran, but someone grabbed me, not Clay, someone bigger." "Do you remember his name?" Mason asked. She nodded slowly. "Just what they called him, the broker." She closed her eyes. "Clay told me I could still walk away. That if I gave him the film, he'd let me go. I didn't believe him. I gave him the film anyway, but I kept the backup. That's when they knew." Mason felt it. A sick, hollow drop in his stomach. "They locked me in a different place at first," she said, "somewhere in the woods. Then when they thought the police were watching Clay, they moved me here. Said no one would ever find me. Said the world had already forgotten." Her voice went soft. "Did they forget?" Mason's voice cracked. "No." Ellie arrived a few minutes later with her recorder. She kept the questions gentle. Danielle nodded when she gave consent. The interview lasted 41 minutes. Names were named. Routines. Storage numbers. Even the name of Clay's cousin, the one who first threatened Sierra. Langley called the state office that night. By morning, an investigative task force was already inbound. The state's attorney general had been briefed, quietly, carefully, and with one demand: no leaks. But it was already too late. 2 nights after Danielle's statement was recorded, Ellie's apartment was broken into. Nothing else was stolen. They flipped every drawer, opened every cabinet. The television was untouched. So were the electronics. Her passport, laptop, even cash left on the kitchen counter. But Danielle's file? Gone. The folder with the storage lease, Her handwritten ledger, the gas receipt, the scan of Clay's signature, every piece was missing. The lock hadn't been broken. Whoever did it had a key. Ellie called Mason at 3:12 a.m., her voice flat and trembling. They took it. What? Danielle's file. The notes, the ledger, the lease, everything. Mason was already half-dressed, reaching for his boots. I scanned it all, he said. It's backed up. Ellie exhaled hard. They knew exactly what to take. They didn't touch the television. Mason didn't sleep again. By dawn, he was parked outside Clay Harrell's old auto shop. The business had been sold, rebranded under a new name. But the storage shed out back, it was still standing. He walked the perimeter alone. Chain-link fence. A new padlock, and just above the alley gate a fresh security camera with a wide-angle lens. He knocked on the office door. A man in his 30s came out. Grease on his shirt, cautious eyes. You the new owner? Name's Dustin. I bought it last year from Harrell's old company. Building came as is. You ever go through that shed out back? Mason asked. Dustin shrugged. That thing? It's nothing but rats and warped plastic. We keep tires in there now. Mind if I look? 10 minutes later, Mason stood alone inside the old shed. It smelled of mildew and old oil. He scanned every wall, every beam, every cabinet. Nothing new, nothing strange. Then he checked the floor. In one corner, the concrete looked different, darker, smoother, slightly raised. He knelt, scraped a line through the dust with his key. Underneath, fresh cement. Someone had patched it. Someone had buried something. Back in his truck, Mason called Ellie again. Who poured concrete over part of the shed? He asked. If Clay did it himself, she said, there won't be a record. But if he hired someone, then there's a contractor. Find him, Mason said. I'll find the reason. That night, Mason went through Danielle's scanned notes again. One page stood out. It read, metal stairs, yellow light, behind the freezer. Not the diner, not Bain, the other place. Oh, it wasn't the storage unit. It wasn't Bain's warehouse. It was somewhere else. He called Sierra. I remember that, she said slowly. There was another place. A side location. Used to be a food prep facility or something. Small shipments. Always late at night. Could you find it? Maybe. I remember the road had a turnoff near the quarry. They drove out the next morning, an hour east, through winding back roads and overgrown access lanes until Sierra pointed. There, she said. That's it. The building was long abandoned, squat and rusted with only one door not boarded shut. A faded sign above the roofline read, Cold Stone Prep, LLC. Inside, the air was stale, dust thick as wool. The walls were lined with broken refrigeration units. And in the back, another steel door. This one had no lock, just a keypad. Mason looked at Sierra. She shook her head. He tried one code. 1998. It clicked open. Inside, the room was low-lit and lined with concrete. A plastic tarp lay crumpled in the corner. Zip ties. A mattress. Bloodstains. Old, but not forgotten. He took photos of everything, every square inch. Then his phone buzzed. Ellie. We found the contractor, she said. The one who poured the patch at the auto shop. He said Clay paid him cash. Told him it was just a utility repair. No permit pulled. Mason exhaled. What's under that cement, Ellie? She was quiet. A beat. Clay's cousin. What? He's gone missing. Last seen 2 weeks ago. His truck was found abandoned in Missouri. Mason looked at the patch of ground he stood on. They're covering their tracks, he said. Ellie didn't argue. That night, Langley sat with Mason in his truck outside the hospital. Danielle was resting. Medicated, but stable. She told me something else, Langley said, voice low. She said there was a man who came once a month, always alone, drove a silver SUV, never talked, just checked the locks, looked at her, then left. Mason blinked. A silver SUV? Langley nodded. She said the bumper had a sticker, faded, something red. Mason's mouth went dry. He remembered the photo, the one taken 3 days before Danielle disappeared. Her leaning against the Camaro, a silver SUV in the background, bumper sticker, Baena Freight. It hadn't been random. The SUV had been watching her even then. All these years they thought she vanished without warning. But someone had been circling her, preparing, tracking. And now, after 12 years in the dark, the pattern was finally breaking open. Mason turned to Langley. "Run the VIN," he said. "Run every registered silver SUV in a 60-mile radius with Bayene connections. Get facial rec from the gas stations. Look for BKR tags." Langley raised an eyebrow. "You think the broker's still here?" Mason didn't blink. "I think he never left." The next morning, law enforcement swept the county. The case file was too wide, now too dirty, too political. When agents raided Clay Harrell's rural home, he had already fled. Neighbors said he left around 4:00 a.m. in a white Dodge pickup, packing quickly with only a single duffel bag. Inside his empty office, files had been shredded, hard drives wiped, paperwork gone. Yet one thing remained, a strip of masking tape affixed to the inside of his top desk drawer. In hand-printed letters it read, "Smile, she's still watching." As Ellie stared at the photo Mason had taken. "That's not a threat," she whispered. "It's fear." Mason nodded. Clay wasn't mocking them, he was running. 3 days after Clay vanished, authorities located a burned-out white truck matching his license plate numbers. It lay abandoned near a riverside access road 40 miles east of the county line. The VIN had been filed off. The tags were missing. No body. Just ashes, melted glass, and 2 objects miraculously intact inside the glove box. A spent burner phone with its battery deliberately removed. A scorched folded sheet of paper, half charred, tucked into a corner. Ellie was the first to read the surviving words. "Ask Darren." Mason stood over her desk printout, jaw welded shut. "Who the hell is Darren?" Ellie pulled up the 1,998 Bayene Freight employee manifest, the one Danielle had reconstructed. There was the name Darren Kay, Harold Clay's cousin. The same cousin Sierra had identified. The same cousin who filed the 1,995 missing girl report that went nowhere. They chased every public lead. Darren resigned from the sheriff's department in 2000. In 2002, he founded a private security firm, legitimate, low profile. In 2004, he purchased a tract of land 5 miles outside town. Dense woods, chain link fencing, no signage, no activity. Officially, it was a firearms and survival retreat. But there were no ads, no classes, no sign of a business opening. Mason met Ellie's eyes. "You think Clay ran to him?" Ellie didn't blink. "Clay's gone. Darren's tying up the loose ends." They presented the new evidence to Deputy Langley, who forwarded it to the State Bureau of Investigation. It took 48 hours to issue a warrant, 12 more hours to assemble a tactical team. At 6:42 a.m., the compound was surrounded. By 7:03, agents entered. Inside, they found 6 rooms, empty except for dust, 3 sealed freezer units, a buried laptop, no Darren. But in a locked cabinet, they discovered something worse. 27 VHS tapes, handwritten labels with initials and dates. A steel filing drawer packed with laminated ID cards and missing person flyers, some stained with age-yellowed blood. On top sat Danielle's flyer butt, also Riley Ditt's, and one that made Ellie go pale, Eleanor Mazer. Ellie's breath caught. "That's me," she mouthed. Mason turned. "What?" Ellie nodded. "I used the byline Eleanor at the paper." She picked up the flyer. "I got a threatening call in '99, told me to drop the Bayene story." Mason's voice flat. "They were watching you too." That afternoon, state investigators delivered digital copies of the tapes for forensic review. Tape number 14. Danielle's interview clear and graphic. Tape number 7. Grainy, dated 1995, Riley's disappearance recorded. Tape number 22 turned everything upside down. It showed Clay standing by a storage unit, speaking off camera. "This one's too much trouble. Get her down to Darren's place until we figure out what to do. Another male voice ground in. We'll keep her cold. Broker's orders, it said. There it was. Proof. Clay had passed Danielle to his cousin. The cousin acted under the broker. A system. Real. And still operating because Darren was still at large, and the broker was unknown, no name, no address, no face, only whispers. That night, Mason went alone to the impound yard where the Camaro was locked in evidence. No flashlight, just memory. He opened the trunk and felt beneath the carpet lining. Something wrapped in black tape pressed hard under his fingers. He peeled it away. Inside lay an old metal key, scratched and coated with dark stains. Engraved on the head was a 5-digit number, 24,783. That wasn't a house key. It wasn't for the Camaro. It was a vault key. At home, Mason reopened Danielle's notebook digitally in the scanned files. Page 12 listed key numbers. Only one was circled, 24,783. A note read, "If something happens, this is the last card." The vault belonged to a bank 2 counties away. Mason didn't approach the bank himself. He called in a favor this time from an old friend in the governor's guard, someone with clearance. By 9:14 a.m., Mason had a warrant. By 9:31, the box numbered 24,783 was his. Inside lay a cassette tape, a small manila folder, a photograph face down. He opened the folder, typed lists of names, addresses, storage unit numbers, and wire transfer receipts. At the top, Bayene Freight logo. Header text read, Operation Summary Broker District 3 for internal use only. End. He pressed play on the tape in the bank's secure evidence room. It was Danielle's voice, stronger now. If you're hearing this, I guess I failed. I couldn't get out. But I kept everything, receipts, transfers, the numbers Clay used. There's a man who calls himself the broker, but he has a real name. I found it once. He used to work at a bank. Her voice caught. His name is Carl B. Merton. Mason paused the tape. Carl B. Mertonage 61 in 1998. Regional loan officer. Later logistics consultant for Bayene. No records after 2001. He vanished. No obituary under his name. No trace. Moments later, Ellie stepped in, face pale. "Ready to see the photo?" she asked. Mason flipped the picture over. On the front was Danielle, next to a man in a gray button-up, hand on her shoulder, the same blurred figure from the freezer video, the old film. Not Clay. Not Darren. It was Carl. State investigators ran his name. They found that in 2002, Carl legally changed his name and moved to Texas. He built a new life, new name, no family. He died in a car crash in 2009. No autopsy. Buried in an unmarked grave. There would be no trial, no perp walk, no justice, except in paper and memory. But Clay? He wasn't a ghost yet. 5 days after the discovery of the deposit box, a truck was pulled from the little river 30 miles downstream. Submerged for at least a week, the vehicle had been weighed down with cinder blocks and draped in a tarp. The license plate had been removed, but the frame matched the Dodge Herald had driven when he fled. Inside, there was no body, but something else remained. Pinned to the dashboard in plastic wrap was a letter handwritten, smudged, and signed. Mason read it alone, twice, before handing it to Ellie. It was from Clay. I never laid a hand on her, I swear to God, but I didn't stop it. I let him scare me. I let the broker build that thing around us. We all got our cut. We all kept our mouths shut. She just kept digging. And when she wouldn't let go, I helped make her disappear. I told them she was trouble. But I didn't want her dead. She was the only one who ever saw through me. Clay Harrell. The note was neither confession nor apology, just cowardice on paper. Clay was presumed dead, though nobody was ever found. Some believed he drowned. Others said he fled to Mexico under another name. But for Danielle, the outcome no longer rested on Clay's fate. Her life was moving again, if only inch by inch. She spent 3 months in a recovery facility under a new identity, away from cameras, headlines, and shadows. Ellie and Mason visited her twice, once at the start, once at the end. The second visit came just before her testimony. Inside the sealed grand jury hearing, Danielle sat upright in a chair too large for her. The room was cold. The prosecutors were gentle, but the photos were not. Neither were the tapes. She didn't flinch. She spoke with clarity, naming names, giving dates, identifying the missing girls, the shipments, the financial trail, the secret meetings. She described the way Clay smiled when he lied, how Darren flinched when the freezer light came on. She talked about the other girls, some she saw, some she only heard. The jury asked her one question: "What do you want us to remember most?" She replied, "That I wasn't the first, and I wasn't supposed to be the last." Before she left the courtroom, Danielle asked to keep one item, the Camaro key, the original one, still scratched, still marked with the dust from the unit where she was found. They gave it to her without question. The investigation closed quietly. Carl B. Merton, a.k.a. the broker, was declared posthumously responsible for the trafficking operation connected to Bain Freight. The state never held a public press conference. Too many names still in office. Too many favors traded in silence. Darren Harrell was listed as missing, presumed armed. A nationwide warrant was issued, but no sightings ever came. It was as if he'd evaporated, just like his cousin. The Camaro remained in evidence lockup, housed behind chain-link fencing and yellow tape. The smiley face once drawn in the windshield dust had long since been scrubbed away. But Mason still stopped by every few months, just to look. He never opened the doors, never touched the dash. He just stood there watching the light shift across the windshield. And sometimes only, sometimes when the sun caught it just right, he swore he could still see the faint outline of that chalky grin. Ellie went back to her office and cleaned it out. She filed one last story under her original name, Rachel Eleanor Mazer. She didn't submit it to the paper. She just printed one copy, sealed it in a manila envelope, and left it in the hands of a friend at the archives department. Mason never returned to the storage unit again. He didn't need to. Everything that mattered had already been unearthed, taped inside glove boxes, buried under cement, or whispered into old cassette recorders. The damage had already been done. Danielle moved out of state. No interviews, no memoirs. She chose a quiet town where nobody knew her name, where no one would ever call her the girl in the Camaro again. On her final night before leaving, she visited the edge of the river. Just before sundown, she stood alone on the bank where Clay's truck had been found. She reached into her coat pocket and took out a single strip of tape, the one from his desk drawer. "Smile," it said. She crumpled it and let it go. The current carried it downstream, vanishing into dusk. Some stories never end with justice. Some just stop when they've been told. And in the quiet that follows, we learn what silence was hiding all along.